The demon realm, ruled by a powerful witch, was home to countless spirits. Far from the human world, deep within the sunless land, lived Meitaro, born of demon blood, yet completely unable to use magic. Alongside him was a human child, Bibi, whose enormous appetite often led her to bite his head. Together, they lived in this strange and shadowed world. Meitaro often worried about her and constantly reminded her to watch her eating habits. While cooking, he would warn her not to follow strangers, even if they offered delicious food, and to never wander the realm alone. But as Bibi ate, she would always assure him that Meitaro's magic was her favorite. The compliment made him happy, though his magic mirror servant quickly ruined the moment with a snide remark, pointing out that it wasn't magic, just cooking. Irritated, Meitaro snapped back, and the two fell into their usual banter, unaware that a slime was watching them from the window. As night deepened and Bibi drifted to sleep, the same slime crept closer. Slipping through the window like a thief, it slithered into her room. Its form began to distort, its mouth stretched open, rows of razor-sharp teeth glinting in the dark, as its body twisted into something resembling a sandworm from Dune. Just as the creature was about to devour the sleeping Bibi, Meitaro appeared. His chilling gaze cut through the darkness as he confronted the intruder, silently claiming the human as his own. The sheer intensity of his presence made the slime tremble. Terrified, the sandworm-like creature shrank back into its original form and fled. Meitaro could feel another presence lingering, a confirmation that other spirits were watching, all of them eyeing the human child. He knew the reason well. It was the very reason he had been nurturing Bibi all this time. According to an ancient legend, anyone who devoured a human heart would gain immense magical power. Many spirits dwelled in the realm, and among them, humanoid demons reigned supreme. Those born with powerful magic were called sorcerers. Meitaro, on the other hand, was born without a shred of it. Yet, he refused to accept his fate. Determined to gain power, he decided to dope. Through forbidden texts and dusty grimoires, he discovered a dark method. To obtain magic power, one must devour the human they summon. Holding a grimoire in one hand and a long staff, Meitaro performed the ritual. He meant to summon a being he could consume, someone whose essence could grant him the magic he'd been denied. But fate, as always, loved irony. The summoning succeeded, but instead of a being of power, he summoned a small, half-dead human girl. She lay face first on the floor, etched with a glowing hexagram, barely breathing. Meitaro crouched beside her to check if she was still alive. Disappointment settled over his face. She was skinny, frail, and worn out. The mirror joked that the summon was fitting for someone of his level. Frustration followed as he ran his hands through his hair, muttering in disbelief that he didn't want an unhealthy heart to devour. This was his one and only chance at summoning. He couldn't afford failure. Then the small human's trembling hand reached out and grabbed his robe. Her lips parted as if to speak, but what came out was not a word. It was a growl. Her stomach was crying out in hunger. Unsure whether she was hungry or delirious, Meitaro hesitated. But when her stomach growled again and again, he couldn't bring himself to eat something that pitifully starved. With a reluctant sigh, he lifted her and sat her at a table. He offered her a plate of cookies he had baked. Before he could even finish his sentence, the food was gone. Still unsatisfied, she looked at him expectantly. He handed her a tuna sandwich, and that too vanished in seconds. Baffled, Meitaro turned toward his talking mirror and asked if humans normally ate this much. The mirror replied with its usual sarcasm, suggesting he might stop feeding what he planned to eat. He was about to continue with his original plan when the girl suddenly looked up at him and asked if he was a sorcerer. Hearing that made Meitaro grin, and just like that, he changed his mind. He wouldn't eat her, not yet. Instead, he'd raise her. The mirror was appalled. It warned that if the Great Witch ever discovered this absurd idea, Meitaro would be in serious trouble. But he brushed off the concern, claiming it wasn't a big deal. He insisted he'd only keep the girl for a little while, assuring the mirror that he merely planned to raise his food until it was ripe for eating. If he was going to do this, he'd do it properly. He would nurture the human, feed her well, and shape her into something rich in both appearance and essence, something worthy of consumption. Just like watching a chrysalis bloom into a butterfly, he figured he might as well enjoy the process. He gave her a name, Bibi. Meitaro mentioned to Bibi that it had been centuries since he last cared for a living being, which left the girls stunned. The mirror eventually relented, convincing itself that as long as Meitaro didn't grow attached, there was nothing to worry about. It found comfort in believing that Meitaro was, after all, still a proper demon. As a demon, no effort was too great to achieve one's goals. Balanced meals, warm baths, clean bedding, and comfortable clothes, Meitaro provided them all. He spoiled the girl like a prized Wagyu cow, doing everything to achieve the result he desired. A year passed. Bibi had become something both adorable and unnervingly strong. She could lift a rice bale with ease. Meitaro could hardly believe it. Despite her young age, she could compete with the strongest men of the human world. When he reached into his pocket to offer her a cookie, she devoured his entire hand along with the treat. As she ate, Meitaro couldn't help but worry. The girl's appetite seemed endless, her obsession with food growing by the day. The mirror reasoned that maybe Bibi hadn't gotten to eat much in her original world, then casually mentioned an impending danger. A tentacled spirit was about to pounce on them. But when it met Meitaro's gaze, the creature froze, then fled into the shadows. Over the year, Bibi had grown both physically and mentally. She was healthy, obedient, and radiant, yet her presence began to attract unwanted attention. The heart that Meitaro had so carefully nurtured drew the gaze of countless spirits. Such a thing did not happen with ordinary humans. It could only mean one thing. Bibi's heart was rich with magical power, and consuming it would grant unimaginable strength. Over time, it would become irresistible. The mirror, ever the provocateur, questioned why Meitaro didn't simply devour her now. It warned that others might claim her first. Meitaro dismissed the remark, waving off the mirror. As long as the human remained within his territory, he saw no reason to worry. Bibi was obedient, and he was confident in his ability to handle any lesser spirits. There was no need to rush. After all, human children grew up so quickly. But as time passed, Meitaro kept postponing the idea of eating Bibi, telling himself that waiting a little longer would be fine. One day, he returned from gathering eggs and was greeted warmly by Bibi. Before he could respond, a pair of massive claws tore through the doorway behind her. The monster nearly snatched her away. A chill ran through him as fear surged. He rushed forward and pulled her into his arms, checking for injuries. She had escaped with only a cut across her neck. Relief quickly gave way to anger as Meitaro scolded her harshly for leaving the grounds alone, reminding her that dangerous spirits roamed the realm, many of them already stalking her as prey. But then he noticed his hands. His claws had dug into her shoulders, streaked with her blood. Slowly, he loosened his grip as the realization sank in. He was no different from the spirits who wanted to eat her. He rose and went to treat her wounds. As he searched for medicine, the mirror spoke again, announcing that a package had arrived from the Great Witch herself. Meitaro froze. It was rare for the Great Witch, his grandmother, to send anything personally. As the highest authority in the realm, she was always far too busy. When Meitaro opened the parcel and saw what was inside, his expression changed. He quickly sent Bibi out to prepare dinner ahead of time. Before leaving the room, she glanced back at him as if she wanted to say something. That night, a soft knock echoed at Meitaro's door. When it creaked open, there stood Bibi, dressed in her cute nightdress, clutching her pillow. Shyly, she muttered that she wanted to sleep in his room tonight. He assumed she had something she wanted to talk about, so he agreed. As she entered, an awkward tension filled the air. Both exchanged uncertain glances as she climbed onto his bed. For someone who wanted to sleep together, Bibi kept a noticeable distance. Meitaro suspected she was still frightened from earlier, or perhaps she had finally realized his true intentions. So he asked Bibi what she wanted to say, but instead of answering, she simply reached out her hand toward him. In it was a small flower. She explained that she had found it beyond the grounds and wanted to give it to him. She explained that Meitaro had taught her that magic was beautiful, and that everything he gave her made her feel warm inside. Wanting to give him something nice in return, she had picked the flower beyond the boundary, though she knew she wasn't supposed to. She buried her face in her pillow as she apologized for breaking her promise, and for making him worry. Meitaro, on the other hand, could hardly believe she still hadn't realized what fate awaited her. What a foolish child, he thought. Yet he knew it was only a matter of time before she learned the truth. The thought weighed on him. These feelings he could do without. For a fleeting moment, he considered ending it all right there, biting into her heart, and becoming one. Meitaro's form began to change. His face opened wide, ready to devour her. But then, he stopped. The urge faded as quickly as it came. His expression softened. Calmly, he told her that if she understood what she had done, she should go to bed now. Bibi hesitated before asking if he was still angry with her. She then asked if she could come closer, if he was done being mad. Meitaro, who had long since stopped feeling such emotions, wordlessly tapped the side of the bed, signaling her to move closer. The thought of eating her no longer lingered. He had already abandoned it. To him, even without magic, having her was enough. Bibi smiled faintly and promised she wouldn't go off on her own anymore. She said she would stay here, with him, and made Meitaro promise to stay with her forever. He pulled her into his arms and whispered that he wanted to be with her too. As the room fell quiet, he told her goodnight, and soon after, Bibi drifted into sleep. Morning came and Bibi had overslept. Still half asleep, she greeted her master a sleepy good morning, only to realize she was no longer in his room. She found herself back in her old, dusty room. Confusion filled her mind as she glanced around the worn furniture and cracked walls. Then panic hit. She rushed outside, shouting Meitaro's name and Mr. Mirrors over and over. People turned to stare, their faces puzzled, their eyes reflecting only confusion. As cold sweat trickled down her cheek, the truth began to sink in. She had returned to the human world. Her voice broke as she whispered a single word filled with pain and disbelief. Liar. Somewhere far away, within the other realm, Meitaro lifted his gaze toward the night sky, a small vial resting in his hand. It was a perfume gifted by the Great Witch, one that contained a spell capable of transferring someone to the human world. The Great Witch had known all along that Meitaro had summoned a human. Along with the perfume she sent came a letter, stating that everything on the other side would be handled. Bibi's circumstances, background, and all the troublesome details would be taken care of. The mirror, however, spoke nervously. It said the situation seemed too convenient. Then, it asked if Meitaro was truly fine with letting her go after raising her all this time. Meitaro's answer had been cold, almost detached. He told the mirror that he simply had no intention of eating her. But the mirror saw through him. It had witnessed everything, the care, the affection, emotions that were far too real for a demon to deny. It knew that Meitaro's concern for her safety was genuine. As long as Bibi remained in the demon world, other spirits would continue to hunt her. Yet Meitaro denied it. He insisted that his heart hadn't softened, that his feelings hadn't changed, only that he'd lost interest in her, and the place she belonged was not by his side. A true demon was one who could wield magic, something Meitaro could barely do. What made things worse was that he was the grandson of the Great Witch herself. Demons whispered behind his back, mocking the idea that someone like him could ever rule the demon realm. Powerless, he had become a disgrace to his lineage, hiding himself away from the world. Even the spirits that feared him weren't truly afraid of him. They were afraid of his family name. He had nothing. Until he met her. That day, the summoning hadn't been a failure at all. What he truly longed for had appeared before him, the spark he needed, a warmth he thought he'd never feel again. Through her, he found something that felt like magic. Then Meitaro made his decision. He declared that he would sleep for 100 years. A choice that startled the mirror, though it eventually understood. By then, Bibi would have lived her life in the human world, safe and free. He brushed off the mirror's concern, telling it to stop talking nonsense and just wake him up when the time came. Then he returned to his room. As he lay down, Meitaro told himself that sending Bibi back had been for her own good. But in truth, it was for his. He was terrified that if she ever learned the truth, that he had raised her just to eat her, she would hate him forever. As tears slipped down his face, Meitaro drifted into his long slumber, wishing for nothing but her happiness. Meitaro awoke to a loud rumbling that shook the entire house. His room was in disarray, and irritation immediately replaced any sense of grogginess. Assuming it was the mirror's doing, he muttered in frustration. 100 years had passed, though for him, it didn't feel like much more than a long nap. Grumbling as he threw on his robe, he stomped to the door and slammed it open, ready to scold the mirror for waking him so poorly. But what he saw stopped him cold. Standing before him was a woman, tall and refined, her eyes partly hidden behind her hair, a small, familiar clip resting above her ear. There was something hauntingly familiar about her presence. The woman greeted him softly, calling him by name, and in that moment, he noticed the faint scar across her neck. The realization struck him all at once. It was Bibi. Disbelief flooded his mind. She had grown, changed, become something unrecognizable yet entirely herself. She explained how difficult it had been to summon him to the human world, how long it had taken, and how uncertain the process was. Meitaro, still disoriented, couldn't understand what she meant, until he looked outside and saw what waited beyond the curtains. The view that met his eyes wasn't of the demon realm. Instead, unfamiliar structures loomed in the distance, towering buildings unlike anything his world possessed. Bibi continued, explaining that because Meitaro was the grandchild of the Great Witch, summoning him had been far more complex than expected. The magic had targeted not only him, but his entire home. It had taken her years to complete. Meitaro could only stare, stunned that someone once so small and fragile had achieved something so impossible. Yet what disturbed him more was her reason for doing it. As confusion and disbelief battled within him, she moved closer. Without warning, she pulled him into her arms, pressing his head gently against her chest. His face flushed, his body stiff with shock, but she held him tightly. She reminded him of her promise, that she had once wanted to give him something as precious as what he had given her. Bringing him here, she said, was her way of keeping that promise, just as he had once summoned her long ago. Her words stirred a storm inside him. Memories surfaced. The laughter they shared, the lessons about magic, the warmth of their time together. But her next words pierced through it all. She recalled that, even knowing he once intended to consume her, she still felt joy in those moments. The color drained from Meitaro's face as he realized she had always known the truth. Then, in a gesture both intimate and unsettling, she took his hand and lifted it to her lips. Her teeth grazed his finger. Her gaze met his. Meitaro's mind spiraled. Since when had she known? Was it before he sent her back? Did it even matter now? His heart pounded violently, torn between fear, regret, and something he couldn't name. The air grew heavy between them, and he realized that the girl he once sheltered had long since become something beyond his control. She spoke softly, telling him not to be afraid. Everything she had learned, warmth, joy, even sorrow, had come from him. Her eyes shimmered as she looked at him, filled with affection that bordered on madness. She confessed that her feelings for him had become twisted and consuming, like a chrysalis that had failed to bloom. Bibi looked at Meitaro with a wild, desperate look in her eyes, her hands gripping his face, as she told him to take responsibility for making her obsessed with him. Meitaro, overwhelmed, protested in confusion and fear, but she only pulled him into another tight embrace. The mirror watched the two from afar, clearly amused by the scene, and seemed to smirk at Meitaro, finding it hilarious how hopeless he was when it came to women. Before Meitaro could react further, Bibi pressed her lips against his cheek. He froze, his face burning red, caught between shock and disbelief as she nipped lightly at his skin. Even knowing everything, his secrets, his sins, she still chose to offer her heart to him. As she stepped back, her smile radiated pure joy. She was genuinely happy to finally see Meitaro again after all those years. And with that, their story ended. I do hope nothing weird happens after this. Like, that's basically his daughter. He raised her for a full year and cared for her like one. There's no way in hell he'd let her smash. Especially when you realize that, for him, it was only about 4 days because of the nap.